We are back in session. Vice Council and President, all members of our jury or alternates are present, and Deputy Hart is, we'll go ahead and explain, please.
State your full name for the record.
Gary Hart,
Spell your first and last name.
G-A-R-Y-H-A-R-T.
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
By whom are you employed?
San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department.
And how long have you been there?
Since 1995, so I'm creeping up on 24 years.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
In taking you back to the end of 2013, were you assigned to do certain tasks regarding the McStay family case?
Yes.
And specifically, were you at least initially tasked with making contact with the FBI and retrieving evidence?
I was tasked with accompanying the Sergeant Gaffney, to the FBI office and picking up the evidence that had been transferred to them by San Diego.
And you did that, correct?
I did.
And it was then taken to whatever items you got, you then took them to your facility, is that correct?
Correct.
And after that, were you given any other assignments in this case?
That's a bit vague. I was given quite a few.
Okay. Were you asked to look at some actual hardware in terms of telephones?
Yes, that was part of what I did.
Okay. And specifically, what were you asked to do regarding the actual telephones?
There were 2 cordless phones that we had picked up from the FBI that reportedly had come from the McStay's residence. And so we charged those 2 phones to see if there was any call logs on either one of the phones. One of them had a call log. I believe that was the VTech phone. The second phone, the Uniden, we charged it and it did not have a log. For whatever reason, it wiped.
Were you able to tell if that the Uniden phone, when you say white, was it wiped manually, or was it just kind of an old phone that didn't work?
I have no idea. All I can say is that we charged it and there was nothing in the memory.
Did you send that off to another investigator to further look to examine that phone?
No.
What did you do with that phone after you looked at it and there was nothing there?
That one went back into evidence.
And to your knowledge, did anyone ever look at that phone again?
No.
Okay, so when you use the term white, why did you use that term as opposed to it just didn't turn on, or it wasn't charged, or whatever?
It was blank. That's another word for blank for me.
Well, I mean, just white means, it could mean that somebody erased it or something.
I guess it could, yes. Did I mean it by that? No, I'm not saying anyone manually erased the phone. I'm saying that we plugged it in, we charged it, and there was nothing in the memory.
And I'm going to return your report to you. Okay, thank you for so did it seem odd to you that that particular phone didn't have any data on it that you were able to look at?
No, some battery operated devices, once you allow them to discharge completely, they lose their memory. Whether or not that's the case with this phone, that's an assumption. The battery died and there's no memory left.
If that were to happen, you have a high-tech unit of the sheriff's office that can look at computers and other devices to see whether they can retrieve data. You're aware of that, right?
Yes.
And did you at any time request them to take a look at that phone to see what happened to the data on that phone?
I did not.
Do you know where in the house that particular phone was taken from?
I do not.
You just knew that it was in the home.
Correct. I didn't retrieved the phone from the residence. I retrieved it from evidence, so I can't testify as to where it was obtained.
What about the other phone?
The VTech phone?
Yes.
Yes, that one, same thing. We charged it. It had some information in the memory.
Did it have a call log?
It did.
And what did the call log, what type of information would the call log give you?
It indicated a date, a time, and a number, and it provided a name, just like the caller ID box would ID.
It's like a cell phone, if you put someone's name in, then it'll show up.
Yes, but in this case, it's not identified by a number that you enter or a name that you enter. It's identified by the phone number itself, whether or not it's blocked and who's registered to that number.
So if I get a call, I don't have to put anything in this particular phone. If I call that number, my name will come up, if the phone that I'm calling from is registered in my name.
Correct.
So this log could have names associated with the calls, correct?
That's correct.
But it does have times and it does have dates.
Correct. I can't testify as to the accuracy of those dates and times, only what the displayed time and date is.
And you viewed the display yourself, correct?
I did.
And when you view the display, do you have any cutoff times as far as dates, or do you just look at every single phone in the log?
I looked at all calls that were recorded on the phone. Any data that was available, I wrote down.
And were you able to see when the first call was in that log?
I was.
And when was that?
If I can refer to my report. The first call indicated it was on February 1st, 10:06 p.m. from Patrick McStay, or a number associated to Patrick McStay. I can't say he's the one that made the phone call.
So instead of going through each and every call in the log, I'm going to just take you to the 4th of February. Now, in between the 1st and the 4th, approximately how many calls were there?
There's 12 calls prior to the 4th.
Okay. And then what time was the last call on the 4th?
The last call on the 4th, is at 5:39 p.m.
Now, is there any way for you to tell by looking at the log whether that call that's in the log was a call that was answered?
No, it did not provide that information.
Does the log have a duration associated with the call?
It does not.
Is that something that is in the phone itself? Because sometimes when you answer a phone, it starts a clock ticking, like 1, 2, and it'll give it a length of time. Do you know if this phone did that?
I have no idea.
Okay. But the length of the call would not be something in the log then?
Not in the log that I viewed, no.
Okay. So the last call at 5:39 is not a call that you know whether or not there was any particular conversation, correct?
Correct. I don't know if that was a completed call.
Does the log, to your knowledge, pick up missed calls? So if the call is not, let's say, answered by anyone in the McStay household, would it still go on the log?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I think it's all phone calls that phone receives, whether it's answered or not. It shows missed calls. It doesn't indicate on the log. I would say absolutely. I'm not sure if it shows everything or not, but it doesn't show whether it's completed.
Is the log, obviously it's a digital log, correct?
Yes.
Were you able to use that device in printing out or displaying a digital log of what you're looking at, which is your report?
I'm not sure I understand. I looked at the log itself, and then I wrote down what I saw.
I guess what I'm asking is, when you say you looked at the log, are you saying you looked at the log that's just looking at the phone, looking at the hardware?
Yes, I physically picked up the phone, and then I looked at the digital display, which showed the last calls received by that phone.
But since it's produced digitally, is it something that you can give to your high-tech unit that can actually produce that in digital form, if you know?
I don't know that we can do that with home phones. We can do it with cellular phones. I don't know that we have that ability with home telephones. I've never tried that, to be honest, and I didn't ask.
And you didn't make an inquiry into that, correct?
No,
And you don't know if anybody checked it out after you turned it back in?
no.
Okay. All right, so let's go to the 5th. You said the 4th, there was a call at 5:39 p.m., correct?
That's correct.
And the next day, the 5th, what's the first call that was received?
February 5th, 9:42 a.m., name not provided.
I'm sorry, what time was that?
9:42 a.m. on the 5th.
Okay. And is there another call after that? On the 5th?
Yes, at 10:39 a.m. from D.R. Horton.
Okay. So those are 2 calls in the morning. Are there any other calls on the 5th in the morning that are on the log?
If you consider 11:29 still in the morning, 11:29 a.m. from Mortgage Protection.
Okay. Now, does this log also have outgoing calls?
No, on the phone, I attempted to use the redial function, and there was nothing to indicate that anything dialed out on that, or it just didn't have that in the memory.
So you tried to use the redial function, but what about just dialing a number, like pushing in the numbers and then pressing send? Would that create an entry in the log?
That I don't know.
Okay. So you don't know if this log is incoming calls or outgoing calls?
No,
And you don't know duration, correct?
no,
You don't even know if the phone's connected.
correct.
So what was the purpose of doing this log?
It was data that was contained within the phone, and at that point, we were in the process of gathering all available data.
But if you have some data, did you at least consider the idea of potentially getting more data based on the log by sending it to the high-tech unit?
On a home phone, no.
And why is that?
Will there be other ways to verify phones? You can do a search warrant for the phone company if that record's still available. Not something we do with home phones.
And do you know whether or not you or anyone on your team requested the phone records for the home phone?
That I don't know.
Did you request anybody to do that?
I did not.
And aside from the home phones, were you assigned to do anything other than you picked up the evidence and you took it to your facility and you logged the information on the 2 home phones? And what else did you do?
I assisted crime scene specialist Heather Radcliffe, Radeleff. I assisted her by removing the evidence from temporary storage. She rephotographed everything. We made sure everything that was on the FBI list we had in our possession, and then she repackaged it under our barcodes and our evidence.
And were you part of the at least person or persons that would have logged in the evidence into your evidence room or?
No.
No. Okay. That someone else does that. Nothing further. Thank you.
Anyone across?
I have a couple questions. Can you give us you indicated that the first call was on February 1st, showing Patrick McStay at 10:06 a.m. or p.m., correct?
That's correct.
The last call, isn't it true, was February 18th at 6:41 p.m. from 858 number with no name provided, correct?
Correct.
And how many phone calls were there between the 1st and the 18th?
$50.
The February 4th call at 5:39 p.m., that was actually from Susan Blake, or that's the name shown on the caller ID, correct?
Correct.
And of those 50 phone calls, how many were from the number 909-374-0102?
I don't see any.
Thank you, nothing further.
Anything on redirect?
Did you, were you part of the team that analyzed the phone records for Joseph McStay?
Objection beyond the scope.
Overruled.
I was not.
So you don't know how many phone calls from that number to Joseph's cell phone there would be, correct?
I do not.
Nothing further.
Anything else?
No.
I'm guessing there weren't any voice messages.
Correct, sir.
Just to follow up on that,
Sure.
was this a system where you could leave a voicemail?
I don't recall it having a voicemail function. That was something we were looking at every part of the phone. I can tell you there were no voicemails on the phone. I can say that much. Whether or not it had that capability, I don't specifically recall.
So there's home phones that you can actually leave a voicemail and it, kind of old school, it's on the actual hardware that it's associated with. And then there's voicemails that you can maybe digitally tap into. Do you know whether or not this phone with the 50 calls had either one of those capabilities?
I don't remember.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Any objection to Detective Hart being excused, still subject to recall?
No, no objection.
All right, thank you, sir, for coming in again. Thank you. And you are excused. Did you have any other witness for this morning?
Sergeant Bachman is here.
Yes.
As requested.
Okay.
Edward Bachman, E-D-W-A-R-D, B-A-C-H-M-A-N.
Okay. You may proceed.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
I think I got into this a little bit last time, but just a quick refresher. Back in November of 2013, you were the case agent for the case involving the McStay family. Is that correct?
That's incorrect. Initially, it was Detective Avila that was the case agent. However, he promoted out of the detail, and so I took over as the case agent.
Do you know when that was approximately?
I believe around July 2014,
Okay.
roughly.
Okay, so kind of in the middle of the investigation, you then became the case agent. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And just as a reminder, what is a case agent? Is that the person in charge of the investigation?
Technically, no. The person in charge would be the sergeant that's on the team. The case agent would be, if we respond out, the case agent would be a person who's responsible for collecting all the reports. We compile the book that is associated with the homicide investigation and prepare basically the case summaries, some other reports that maybe the other investigators wouldn't.
Okay. So does the sergeant, and who was it in this case? Did that change also, or was that constant throughout?
No, it did change. Initially, at the time of the call out, it was Sergeant John Gaffney, and then at the time, about June or July-ish, 2014, it became Sergeant Chris Fisher.
So about the same time that you became case agent, then Sergeant Fisher became the sergeant in charge.
Correct.
Okay. So, did your duties change from, because you were still investigating it prior to becoming the case agent, correct?
Yeah,
Your duties changed after you became the case agent, correct?
they didn't necessarily change. Rather than be subject to call-outs on other investigations, we focused primarily on this investigation.
Who's the one that is actually assigning other law enforcement officers their jobs? Is that the case agent?
No, that would generally be the sergeant.
Okay. So the sergeant actually is working with the group and making assignments, is that correct?
Generally, and it depends on the investigation, because as part of being a team that you kind of collaborate with one another, figure out what needs to be done, and then at some point we're all investigators, so people will step up and say, I'll take this part, you take this part, and we divvy up the work so that it's spread equally.
So it's sometimes it's just self-assigned.
Could be, yes.
Okay. And because there may be different aspects of the investigation, let's say financial or the truck or whatever, different areas. And then a particular investigator may take a certain area. Is that accurate?
They may, yeah.
Okay. Did that happen in this case, where certain areas were assigned or self-assigned to specific areas?
Yeah, I mean, the decision was made as far as who was going to do certain interviews or conduct certain follow-up investigation as it came up. I don't know that from the initial start of the investigation that we said, okay, you're only going to do this. It was just as things came up, if somebody wasn't involved in something right then, it would be assigned to that person to investigate.
And so there was, I guess, collaborative meetings then, where all the investigators would talk together and decide, hey, this is where we're going, this is what we should do, things like that.
I'm sure there were, yeah.
Okay. And how many different detectives were involved? Because we've heard the term homicide team. Who does this team consist of? How many people that were involved in this investigation?
At any given point from start until the trial started?
Well, let's say at the height of the investigation, how many detectives were assigned to this case?
At the initial time of the call out, it was a team of 4 of us with a sergeant that responded out. At the I guess July-ish of 2014 area, there were a different 4 of us with a sergeant that were assigned to work on this case. But there were obviously more than 4 that worked on it throughout the entirety of the investigation.
So there would be, at any given time, 4 detectives and a sergeant, and then of course there's maybe folks that work in CSI or other functions, but 4 detectives, correct?
Not always, but at times, yeah, there'd be generally about 4.
Well, you were the case agent, so my question is, how many at the height of the investigation, meaning the most assigned to this case, how many detectives were assigned at the time when the most detectives were assigned?
Again, I can't say I can't give you an exact number, because there were certain times where if somebody was out doing a follow-up on one thing, they may be asked to do something. Obviously, through the course of this trial, you've seen more than just 4 detectives testify as they're part of the investigation. So at any particular time, there were probably 4 detectives that were assigned to there. But given time off and whatnot, I can't say that throughout the entire thing that there were a total of only 4 working on it.
How about this question? How many detectives worked on the case during the length of the investigation?
I can't put a number on it.
Is it more
in
than-
excess of 10.
In excess of 10, okay. So a part of the case agent's duties be to be responsible for the reports that the other detectives are writing? Reviewing their reports, making sure they're accurate, stuff like that?
No, that'd be an incorrect statement. The sergeant's the one that reviews the reports and signs the reports off.
Does the case agent review the reports of the other detectives?
Sometimes, and maybe in the absence of the sergeant, but not generally, no.
Okay, so part of your job as a case agent wouldn't then to be to investigate other, or not investigate, but to review other reports by other detectives?
I'm sure I reviewed, as a case agent, I reviewed other reports, but generally not for clarity or grammatical type stuff. Generally, that's on the sergeant. Once it's signed off by the sergeant, it goes to the case agent who organizes it in the book.
Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about one part of the investigation now, and I might get to others, okay? Time permitting. But the first area I want to talk about is you went to the formerly the McStay residence, because in 2014 it wasn't the McStay residence anymore, but if I refer to that, you know what I'm talking about, correct?
In Fallbrook?
In Fallbrook.
Yes, sir.
And you went there in October of 2014, correct?
Without reviewing the report, I didn't go inside the residence. I went to it and I stayed outside the residence.
Do you have your report with you?
I don't. I wasn't told what I was testifying to today.
I'll show you. I'm going to show you this part of the report and
See if this refreshes your,
You have a page number?
yeah, so page 7735. So take a look at that, see if you recognize it.
This report has to do with Mr. McStay's truck, with doing the analysis on the truck, or the,
You mean Mr. Merrick's truck?
I'm sorry, Mr. Merrick's truck. Correct.
Okay. That's what I'm referring to.
You asked me if I went to the McStay residence. This wasn't at the McStay residence.
Where was that?
This was conducted at Mr. Brubaker's residence.
So all the experiments that we've been watching regarding the truck was done at Mr. Brubaker's residence?
If you're referring to where we took the Faro scan and where we took there was a cell phone video, I believe, or a video that was done, that was not done at the McStay residence.
We're going to talk about this report right now. You know what report I'm talking about? You know, did you author that report?
Yes.
Okay. And what is this report of?
This report is basically of the investigative measurements that I took with regard to Mr. Merrick's truck.
And if you could look at 7737, 7738. Tell me if that's also part of your report.
Yeah. It is.
And so this, and what date did this occur? Can you say this was at Mr. Brubaker's residence?
These, looking at this part right now, the photographs are taken, for example, the two on page 7737, the top two photos are snipped from the McStay surveillance video. Well, one's from the McStay surveillance video, one is from the Brubaker residence, the third is from when, I believe it was CSS Russ processed the vehicle.
So, okay, thank you for that, I appreciate that. Let me ask you this. The jury has seen a video of a truck driving on the roadway at night with headlights on, and they've been told it's Mr. Merrick's truck. And it's video, and it's a video. Is that, are you saying that happened at Mr. Brubaker's residence?
I wasn't here when the video was showed. I don't know which video we're referring to.
Did you guys see a video of Mr. Brubaker's residence?
I believe this is, if I remember correctly, the video or the picture on the left on page 7737 was from a video captured at Mr. Brubaker's residence.
Did you ever take Mr. Merrick's truck, or were you part of any investigation where you took Mr. Merrick's truck to the Fallbrook home on the States?
I was not.
Okay. But this is your report, right?
It is.
Okay. So, when you went to Mr. Brubaker's residence, what was the purpose of going there?
Objection. Cumulative to Sergeant Smith's testimony in January.
Mr. Brubaker was the then owner of Mr. Merrick's former truck, I guess, or the truck that he owned at the time of the incident.
Right. Were you going to retrieve the truck, or were you going to do?
We went there to do the process the Faro scanner around the truck.
What was your understanding? Were you going to do the Faro scan?
I assisted with the Faro scan.
Okay. Who was in charge of doing the Faro scan?
I believe it was Detective Zert and I both worked with the Faro scanner.
What's the name of the other person?
Zert, Z-E-I-R-D-T. Brian is his first name.
Okay. And what about Detective Smith or Sergeant Smith?
I believe he was there. I don't recall if Smith was there.
Okay, so then if he wasn't there, he wouldn't have participated in the Faro scan, correct?
Again, I don't remember if Smith was there. I don't recall if Smith was there or not.
Okay. So you went down there at least with Detective Zert, and who else?
It would be Captain Newport, which is now, or at the time was Sergeant Newport, and I don't recall who else was there. I'm trying not to get it mixed up between who went to the McStay residence and who went to Brubaker's home to scan it. I don't recall if it was on the same day or not.
But it was three of you that went.
I believe the three of us were there. I know the three of us, Zert, Newport, and I think there was somebody else, but I don't recall for certain, went to the McStay residence. And I think we went to Brubaker's the same day, but without looking at reports, I couldn't tell you for sure.
Did you? I just showed you this report on the one that you just reviewed, and that was October 15th, correct?
That might be the day on the report, but I don't know if that's the day we went to the residence.
Okay, well, maybe you can just, sorry, I took it away from you then.
Okay. Yeah, it was October 15th. It says on the report that Smith and I went to Brubaker's residence to do the investigative measurements.
If you don't remember Smith being there.
No, that's what I'm saying. There was 2 days, and I don't remember if it was the same day that the group of us went to the McStay residence and processed Merrick's truck. I don't recall if that's the same day. I didn't want to mistake who was there or if it was the same day or not. It's been some time, so I don't recall offhand.
Okay, so you're saying that there was another day that you went to the state residence with the truck?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we visited both sites, but I don't recall if that was on the same day or not.
The day that you went to Mr. Brubaker's residence, you did the videotaping of the truck at nighttime, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. The day that you went to the McStay residence, if it wasn't the same day, it was around that time period?
It would have been around the same time frame. If my report says that Smith and I went there, that would be factual based off of what I know to happen at that time. It's obviously been some time since then.
I'm not trying to trick you. I showed you the report.
Right.
To refresh your recollection of the meeting before, so I'm just asking. The date that you would have gone, whether it was around that time frame to the McStay residence, did you go with Mr. Merrick's truck? Because I asked you that before.
If you're asking if we took Merrick's truck to the McStay residence, no, we did not.
When did you go to the McStay residence? Not when, not in terms of date, but around that time you went to the McStay residence for what purpose?
To conduct the Faro scanner of the front of the residence in order to be able to try and mesh up the video to see if we could plug the truck into the Faro scan to be able to say that that was the video, or that was the truck in the video.
And who would have gone, with the same people that would have gone to Mr. Brubaker's residence, gone to the McStay residence?
That's why I'm not sure if it was the same day. If I
I'm not
remember,
asking if it's the same day, I'm just asking if it's the same group of folks that went from Mr. Brubaker's that also went to the McStay residence.
I believe Newport, Zert, me, and I want to say somebody else went to the McStay residence and did the Faro scan that day. I think Smith, me, possibly Hanky, went and did the follow-up on Merrick's truck at Brubaker's residence. I don't remember if it's the same day, but I can't be certain.
And in terms of the barrel scan that you did, or that you were part of at the Brubaker residence, how long did that whole process take, including the video taping and doing the barrel scan and all of that?
Maybe an hour or two, something like that.
And you actually made a videotape. You were on that videotape.
I don't remember if I was, one of us recorded it on a phone, or I believe it was a cell phone.
And then you wanted to see, was the purpose of doing those, that videotape with that truck, was it to see whether or not that truck that you were looking at Mr. Brubaker's house, which is now Mr. Brubaker's truck, right? Did it match what was in the Mitchell video? That was kind of the purpose, correct?
I don't know if we're going to be able to say that it matched, but maybe to look for consistencies.
And that's what this report is about, correct?
That one is basically just doing the investigative measurements to say, when we did these, we compared measurements, we looked at video to show similarities through the 3 pictures and then the measurements off the truck.
So, when you're aware that Mr. Merritt's had a light on the right upper side, correct? I'll give you 772 and
Okay. Okay, the marker light up top.
And in the Mitchell video, which you did a side-by-side comparison, that's what you put next to the light on Mr. Merritt's truck, correct?
Correct.
So when you guys looked at the Mitchell video, was it just you that looked at it to do this comparison, or was it the team that you spoke of?
Likely it was the team that noticed similarities in reviewing the pictures in the video.
So the team looked at the actual light on Mr. Merritt's truck, and then looked at the Mitchell video, and somebody drew a circle around the light on Mr. Merritt's truck, correct?
Yeah, that was me after the report.
And then somebody, what is the object that there's a circle around on the Mitchell video?
It looks to me like you can see the light in the video.
So the team was collaborating, referring to the Mitchell video with that light there, correct?
Yeah, just on the fact that you can see a light in the video.
Okay, so you watched that video probably several dozen times, I would imagine.
It's probably a fair statement.
And I'm going to publish that for the jury. See what we're talking about. I'm wondering if we could do it digitally. If we can't, then I'll just put it on the
Your Honor, at this point, I need to object as to the form of the exhibit that's about to be posed. One, it's not an exhibit. 2, it contains other hearsay.
Overruled, the mark is next in order. So what number will it be? Be marked as exhibit 1145.
Of course, I know it's not going to be the greatest copy here. We're going to try a digital copy, so it might be easier to see if we can get attorney or this is what we were just talking about, right, Sergeant Bachman?
Correct.
And this was on, I think you said October 15, 2014, correct?
That was when we went to Brubaker's residence. I don't remember when the report would be at the bottom.
The report is October 17, 2014.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
Maybe around the time.
Okay. But the photo, this actual photograph that we're looking at on the left side, if you could describe to the jury what that is.
It would basically be a still portion or a photograph of Mr. Merritt's old truck that he had when we processed it at Brubaker's residence.
Okay. And that would have been taken at that photograph itself would have been taken at Mr. Brubaker's residence, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And then on the right, what are we looking at?
That's a snapshot of the video that was obtained from Jennifer Mitchell's residence.
And in this analysis, again, this is with the team, as you indicated, on the right side of this photograph, there's another circle there, correct?
Correct?
And that's what you described as the light in the Mitchell video, correct?
Yeah, it was the light that we saw in the truck.
Okay. And the purpose of circling that is to show the similarities, is that correct?
Correct.
And did the team that was out there do any other measurements when you went to the McStay residence? Did you do measurements, let's say, of the Mitchley house? And when I say Mitchley house, do you know what I'm referring to?
You're talking about the house across the street where
Yes.
Jennifer Mitchell lived?
Yes.
The day that we were out there, no, we just did the Faro scan. But again, other detectives went out on different days, so I don't know what they did during their time out there, but when we processed it and ran the Faro scanner, we just did the Faro scan in the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood?
Yeah, it was basically so you can mesh the scans together to get different images. So there were multiple scans that were performed there.
As far as the photograph on the right, which would be what we've been referring to as the Mitchley residence, did you do any, or did you participate in any measurements of Miss Mitchley's front porch, her roof, her awning, or anything of that nature?
I did not.
And this information that you have here that shows the light as you described, that information in your report is shared with the district attorney's office, right? You write this?
Section relevance.
Okay.
So at some point you went to the McStay residence and did the Faro scan. Was that also at night, or was that during the daylight hours?
It was during the daylight hours, if I recall.
Okay, so would it be safe to say that if it was the same day, it would have probably been before you went to Mr. Brubaker's residence?
That'd probably be a fair statement.
Well, since I think the photograph on the left is at night, right?
Right.
Okay. And then I'm going to show you Bates number 7737. I showed it to you up there, and I believe you identified this, and this will be next in order, so 111146. Maybe we'll do it digitally so we can get a better view. You recognize this as part of that same report?
Yes, sir.
And if you can describe on the left what we're looking at.
The left shows basically a still or a screenshot of the truck when we processed it or looked at it at Brubaker's residence. The photograph on the right would show a snippet of the Mitchley video.
Okay. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit because this was a little confusing. If you scroll down a little bit. So you had said that, I think you just said now that the photograph on the right was the Mitchley video. If you could just, you said you authored this report, correct?
Right, and I just noticed it said that the photo on the left was from the Mitchley video, which it's incorrect. That'd be the one on the right was from the Mitchley video.
Okay. So again, you're drawing circles around what you believe were similarities, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And in this case, on this, I guess in this case, you're pointing out an electrical box on the bumper of Mr. Merritt's truck, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And are you aware of the work of any of your experts in regards to the comparison of the Merritt truck to the Mitchley video vehicle?
No, sir.
So you didn't do anything after this, or did you, to either exclude or include Mr. Merritt's vehicle as the vehicle in the Mitchley video?
I'm not real sure on your question if we did anything after.
Yes.
After I left the homicide detail, I didn't work on the investigation anymore.
Well, this is about October 15th, as you indicated, correct?
Right.
Okay. So after October 15th, 2014, did you do anything further than what we're looking at here to either exclude or include Mr. Merritt's vehicle as being the one in the McStay video?
I did not know.
Okay. But you were the case agent at the time, correct?
Correct.
So you would have been aware of what the other detectives would be doing, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty fair statement.
Okay. So are you aware of any other detectives that did anything after October 15th to either include or exclude Mr. Merritt's vehicle as the vehicle in the McStay video?
At the time, we were trying to find someone to be able to mesh the Faro scans together and do an image overlay of the surveillance video to be able to try and include or exclude. At the time that I left, I don't believe we had any of that complete to show whether it was a positive or, showed consistencies or whatnot.
Okay, but are you aware of when Mr. Merritt was arrested?
Yes,
And when was that?
November 2014.
Okay, so a month after this, correct?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks to a month after this.
So my question actually is, between the time of October 15th and to the time Mr. Merritt was arrested, are you aware of any efforts by you or other detectives to either include Mr. Merritt's vehicle or exclude it from the McStay video?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled,
I don't think so, sir.
Okay. So then this would be it in terms of your work or your team's work as to whether or not that is Mr. Merritt's vehicle in the McStay video.
Objection assumes facts not in evidence and speculation as to other workers.
So, are you aware at this time, let's say between October and November of 2014, whether your unit was working with any photogrammetry experts that would be doing the overlays or working with the Faro scan material or anything like that?
Between that time frame, we were trying to find someone that would do it, but I don't believe that we had solidified anyone that was able to do it at the time.
Do you know of any individuals that you would have contacted to try and do it?
Me personally, no.
Okay. What about the team? Who are some of the individuals your team tried to contact to do this?
Your objection calls for speculation and lacks foundation based on his answers.
overruled.
I don't remember everyone offhand. I believe we tried to use Cognitech, but at the time that I left out of there, I wasn't part of that.
The Cognitech would be Dr. Lenny Rudin, correct?
I know Lenny, but I don't know. I know the name Lenny, but I don't know what his actual name or title is.
So you didn't have any involvement with working with him at all?
No, I never personally dealt with him at all.
And then I would say a week after this, October 15th date, you interviewed Mr. Merritt. Is that right?
I think so.
October
I think it was like
22nd.
October 22nd or 23rd, somewhere around
October 22nd, does that sound right?
there. I think that sounds right.
Okay. And that's what the jury has heard as the 8-hour interview. Does that sound like the one?
Objection misstates testimony.
Overruled.
That was the interview when he came to the sheriff's headquarters. I think it was about 8 hours.
And during that interview, you were asking Mr. Merritt about his vehicle being at the McStay residence on February 4th. Do you
Objection
recall that
calls
night?
for hearsay.
Sustained.
Well, did you ask Mr. Merritt about his vehicle being at the McStay residence?
Objection relevance calls for hearsay.
Sustained is phone for hearsay.
So, in addition to this work that you did on October 15th, were you also involved in the processing and photographing of the Isuzu Trooper?
No, I think that was time that did that, but I can't say for certain.
I'm going to show you your report, it's date 7740. At the bottom, 7740. That's where you might want to start.
Okay.
Does that refresh your memory?
Yeah, I didn't process it, is what you asked. I didn't do the processing, but I compared pictures based off of the belief initially that it was the trooper leaving the residence. So I showed the inaccuracies in my report based on the fact the exhaust pipe in the video, you can see that the vehicle leaving the scene has the exhaust pipe on the passenger side. The trooper has the exhaust pipe on the driver's side. So I was showing the fact that that excludes the trooper, for lack of a better word.
So you're looking for how to exclude exclude that vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And for Mr. Merritt's vehicle, you're looking to include it, correct?
Yeah, to find consistencies in there, yeah.
Okay. But with the trooper, you were looking for inconsistencies.
Correct.
All right. So then with the trooper, you circle the exhaust pipe, correct?
Yes, sir.
And this is a report that you authored, correct?
Correct.
Now, you did that because in San Diego, when they had the case, they determined that it was the Isuzu trooper that was the vehicle.
Objection calls for speculation and hearsay.
Sustained.
What was the reason you were looking for inconsistencies? Why look at the trooper?
Because the initial belief was in the Midgley surveillance video that was the family leaving in the Isuzu trooper.
And as far as the work on the trooper, where did that occur? Was that just at the sheriff's?
Where was it processed?
No, not that.
This wasn't a processing day, this was a comparison day that you did this work, correct?
No, I took photographs
Okay.
of the previously processed vehicle. So when the crime scene specialist and the detective processed the vehicle, they provided me with a copy of a CD that had all the photographs. So I used the photographs from that processing day to compare to ones and put them in my report.
So that would be there was only one processing of the trooper, correct?
I don't think that, I believe only processed it one time, and I think it was Detective Avila that did that, but I can't say for certain.
Okay. But that's the information that was used for your work, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, as far as other assignments that you had in this case, and I'm talking about after October 15th. I know you did other things prior to that, but after October 15th, after you did that comparison with Mr. Merritt's truck, what did you do after October 15th? What was your next assignment, whether it was self-assigned or whether you were assigned by somebody else?
I don't remember offhand everything that I did after that, sir.
Okay.
I believe I know I interviewed Mr. Merritt. Later, I authored a rainy warrant for his arrest. I completed a case summary, but I can't remember everything else that I did after that.
Okay. Was there, did you ever review your report after you wrote it?
I'm sure I probably did, but I obviously, I'm sure it was subject to human error because I noticed an error as far as how I labeled the photographs in there.
Okay. Did you interview Mike McStay?
Yes.
Were you aware, did you take photographs of any of his vehicles?
At the time of the interview? Or-
At any time?
No.
Were you aware that he owned a truck with the exact model as Mr. Merritt's truck?
Objection misstates the testimony as being exact.
The same model, different year, same model.
No, sir.
You were never made aware of that?
If I-
I'm going to object again. That again misstates his testimony.
If I was made aware at the time, sir, I don't remember as I sit here today.
But you're not aware of any photographs that would have been taken of Michael McStay's vehicle? Or are you? At any time?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
When I contacted Mr. McStay, he drove a completely different vehicle than this.
Were you involved in his interview in September of 2014 where you went out to, or where detectives went to his residence?
I went to his residence. We didn't contact him there. When we made notification about the fact that the bodies were recovered, we contacted him at a business nearby. When we did the interview, it was in Orange County Sheriff's Station.
Okay. Was there a separate interview at his residence in September of 2014?
Not that I conducted, no.
Okay. So, but you do, as you indicated earlier, you are made aware, if you don't read all the reports, you're made aware of the other activity of the other detectives, correct?
Yeah, but I don't remember anybody contacting at the residence.
Okay, but you would be aware if Mr. McStay had given that information regarding having the same type of vehicle as Mr. Merritt.
Objection assumes facts not in evidence, lacks foundation with this witness based on his answers.
I don't know if I would have known at the time, sir, but it may have been something that was shared there, but again, like I said, as I sit here today, I don't recall knowing that.
Okay. So it sounds like at some point he left the homicide detail.
Yeah, I was promoted out of there.
When was that?
August of 2015?
Okay, so after Mr. Merritt was arrested, that's when that happened.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so backing up to initially, were you present at the gravesite? Did you ever go out to the gravesite?
Did.
And what was it? Were you one of the first people to go out there, or did you go subsequent to other detectives?
No, I was one of the original team members that was called out on.
Okay, and you recall when you went?
It was November 2013. I forget the date without looking at the...
Without a date, forget about the date. How long after the initial call came in that the remains were found? Approximately how long after that did you go out?
The call out came one day, but because of the fact that daylight was ending, they secured the crime scene, held it for the night. My team responded out the following morning is when we started the gravesite excavation and the grid search and all the other stuff that people have talked about.
And how long did you participate in the activity at the gravesite?
Objection, cumulative and relevance.
It was over a 2-day period.
And then did you participate in the autopsy?
No.
Were you made aware of the results of the autopsy?
Yes, sir.
And so you were aware of the injuries that Dr. Shangshri had documented?
Yes, sir.
And at the gravesite there was a sledgehammer that was found as well, correct?
That's correct.
And did you, at that point, were you assigned to do anything in regards to determining the cause of death in terms of, and not to determine the cause of death, but were you assigned to do anything in regards to documenting the injuries aside from Dr. Shangshri?
No, at the time, Detective Avila was the case agent, so he responded for the autopsies. And when he went there, they did a comparison of the remains to the sledgehammer, and he documented all that stuff. And the cause and manner of death was determined by Dr. Shangshri, and it was, I think Detective Avila put it in his report.
Okay. Now, at some point, you became aware of Dan Kavanaugh, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how did you become aware of him in this investigation? Did somebody tell you about him, or is that something that you read about from San Diego, or how did that come about?
We first learned of Dan Kavanaugh on day 2 of the excavation when we were briefed by San Diego Sheriff's detectives.
Okay. And was he somebody that was a potential suspect for you?
From-
relevance.
From the onset of the investigation, we didn't exclude anyone as a potential suspect. So I guess, yeah, everyone was a suspect at the beginning.
Well, did you have an opportunity to talk with him or do any investigation to either include him or eliminate him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What did you do?
We interviewed him and then got phone records for his cell phone that he had at the time. We looked into his alibi that he provided and were able to verify his alibi.
How were you able to verify his alibi?
We talked to his girlfriend at the time.
Okay. And did you talk to her in person?
I did not. I believe Hanky did.
So somebody talked to his girlfriend. What else?
Obtained his phone records,
Okay. And what would his phone records tell you about him being in Hawaii?
whether or not he was in Hawaii at or around the time of the disappearance,
But what about his phone records would show that?
the cell site location.
So it's your testimony as a case agent that you had cell site locations for Dan Kavanaugh.
I don't remember exactly what we have for Kavanaugh as far as if we had his GPS location at the time. We talked to his girlfriend, Lauren Knowles, who said he was in Hawaii, and she did not care for Mr. Kavanaugh, had no problem providing the alibi. She provided us with an image that showed them on the beach while they were there, and then his phone records indicated that he was making multiple calls to businesses in Hawaii to show that he was not in California at the time of the disappearance.
Do you have to be in Hawaii to make calls to numbers in Hawaii?
You don't, but I think that supported this statement, especially given the fact, like I said, Ms. Knowles was not a fan of Mr. Kavanaugh, yet she still was honest and provided an alibi for him.
What about checking with the airlines or getting a copy of a boarding pass? Did you do any of that?
Detective Otto did.
So you're aware of Detective Avila getting that material?
I don't know if he got it, but I know he spoke to TSA personnel or somebody from Hawaiian Airlines that verified that Kavanaugh's flights showed to and from. They basically showed that he would have likely been in Hawaii at that time.
So that's your understanding, is that Detective Avila spoke with somebody at the airlines and they confirmed that he was in Hawaii during what time period?
He left prior to their disappearance, and he returned after the time frame that they disappeared. It was also believed that he contacted Patrick McStay requesting the welfare check on the family while he was in Hawaii as well.
Sorry, what was the last name? I missed that.
Kavanaugh contacted Patrick McStay requesting the welfare check while he was in Hawaii.
But, okay, so let's talk about that. He requested a welfare check, but what about him requesting a welfare check would put him in Hawaii?
I guess nothing would say that he was in Hawaii at the time that he made that phone call, other than the fact that it supported his statement.
Okay. Did you receive any PayPal records for Mr. Kavanaugh?
I don't recall if I did or not, to be honest with you.
What about bank records?
I don't recall.
Did you request any?
I don't believe that I did, but again, sir, it's been a number of years, so I don't recall everything that each detective did.
Okay. And have you reviewed any PayPal records in this case?
At some point during the investigation, we reviewed the PayPal records of Mr. McStay. But again, I don't know that I don't believe I prepared any investigative reports regarding that.
Then you would know that the PayPal records have an IP address associated with them, correct?
I don't know that I would know that because I'm not all that familiar with the PayPal stuff.
Okay. Are you familiar with? Well, did you? Okay. Did you know that Dan Kavanaugh had a PayPal account?
Not with certainty as I sit here today. At the time, I may have known that, but I don't know as I sit here today. I don't want to misstate.
Well, there was an interview with Dan Kavanaugh, correct?
Correct.
And did you participate in that interview?
Detective Hanky and I did the interview, yes.
So you actually drove down to San Diego and you interviewed him, correct?
Yes, sir.
In that interview, did you ask him about going to
Protection
Hawaii?
relevance calls for hearsay.
Did you pick up any flight information, boarding passes, anything of that nature when you went to see Mr. Kavanaugh?
No.
Now, I'm asking you, did you ask him? I'm not asking you what Mr. Kavanaugh told you. I'm asking, did you ask Mr. Kavanaugh about his flight information for going to Hawaii?
We may have, sir. I don't remember everything from his interview. I didn't prepare the report in his interview, and I don't remember exactly what we asked him.
I'm trying to pull up a report from Detective Avila that I'm going to show you in a minute, but so if I understand correctly, you did you talked to his, or somebody talked to his girlfriend, right?
Yes, sir.
She provided a photograph.
Yeah, I think there was it was some sort of social media post that she made while they were in Hawaii.
Now let me ask you this: on this social media post, did she direct you to the Facebook account that you could actually go online and look at Facebook and see the post, or did she give you a piece of paper that was a Facebook post, if you recall?
She didn't give me anything because I didn't talk to her.
Your team.
I don't know. You probably have to ask the detective that spoke with her. I don't recall.
But you were the case agent, right?
You're right, I was the case agent, but I didn't interview her. I don't recall offhand.
Right. You know who would have done that?
I think it was Hanky that interviewed her.
Okay. Now, and you personally don't remember, and I just want to get it right. And so it's not that you didn't review his PayPal records, you just don't remember. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't recall if we looked at his records or not. I don't recall if I looked at them.
Okay. So, other than the things you've just stated, did you do anything else to verify whether he was in Hawaii or not?
Me personally, no.
What about members of the team?
Like I said, I think Avila, he prepared a report stating he contacted them. I don't know, short of getting his phone records and stuff that I talked about already, if there was anything else that was done.
Okay. What about reviewing San Diego's materials? Were you briefed? Did you attend a briefing where San Diego kind of told you what they have done and kind of gave you an update?
Yes, sir.
Question asked and answered.
Were you aware of what information was given regarding Kavanaugh's location being in Hawaii?
I'm sure I was because I attended the briefing, but I don't recall if I was able to review my reports, or if I knew what I was going to testify to, I would have been better prepared reviewing my reports.
Well, you'll probably be back again, so if you could do that, that'd be great. Bring it and be prepared to talk about the entire investigation. That would be helpful. Okay? Just, if that's what you're,
Move to strike counsel's comments and admonish.
The objection sustained. You can ask your next question.
right. So, whether you're going to verify a location of Mr. Kavanaugh, that was one thing. Was there, in addition to interviewing Mr. Kavanaugh, did you speak with any of his family members?
No.
Did you speak with the person that he would have been with in Hawaii, that he said he stayed with in Hawaii?
The girlfriend?
No. Mr. Kavanaugh indicated he was staying at a particular location, correct?
I believe so, but I didn't speak to anyone there.
Okay. Did anyone in your team speak to anybody that at the location that Mr. Kavanaugh said he was staying at?
I don't recall.
Do you recall wanting to get that information if he stayed with somebody?
No, and I'm sure that was probably something that was asked about, but
Okay.
I think when we talked to Miss Knowles, she confirmed that he was there.
But Ms. Knowles was his girlfriend at the time, correct?
At the the time that they went to Hawaii?
Yes,
Yes.
but not at the time when you talked to, or your team talked to her.
Ms. Knowles was pretty frank about the fact that she couldn't stand Mr. Kavanaugh at the time we interviewed her.
Well, she also told you that she was afraid of him, correct?
Objection, that calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
I don't, again, if that's what Hanky put in his report, I know that she did not.
Objection,
verify.
double hearsay at that point.
Sustained.
We
Well,
will
you're-
strike
you-
any answers and
Well,
questions.
the last answer is victim jury suspicion.
Well, you were aware that she was a victim of domestic
Objection
violence.
assumes facts, not evidence,
Yeah.
argumentative.
And violates
Did
the
you-
inland ruling.
Did you,
Your Honor, did you hear Mr. Dougherty's objection?
Again, the last objection is sustained.
you said that she was not fond of him at the time, correct?
At the time of the interview, no, she was not.
Do you know why?
Objection, relevance, calls for hearsay. Double hearsay, actually, since he didn't interview her.
Sustained.
Did you try to make yourself aware of what her situation and her relationship was with Mr. Kavanaugh at the time?
Objection, hearsay, there's no case agent exception to the hearsay rule.
Sustained.
Is there, well, did you review any reports that, did you review the reports that the detectives did in regards to the interview with his girlfriend?
Again, objection, not relevant, calls for
The
hearsay.
objections sustained is cumulative, we already indicated the jury.
So, were you aware of any, were you aware of any family member that indicated he was in Hawaii at the time?
Objection, relevance.
And asked and answered lacks foundation based on his previous answer.
Sustained,
we-
you are indicating not aware of any family members.
Were you aware of it, if any?
Yeah, no, didn't interview.
Okay. Were you aware of any family members that had information of whether Mr. Kavanaugh was or was not in Hawaii at the
Again,
time?
objects, lacks foundation.
Sustained.
Well, you interviewed Mr. Kavanaugh, correct? You were there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did he not talk about,
Objection, calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
did he not talk about a family member that would vouch for him being in Hawaii at the time?
Objection, calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
He may have, sir, I don't remember the entirety of Mr. Kavanaugh's report or his interview.
And you're not aware, again, of any family member that was contacted by your team?
No, I don't believe I am.
Okay. Now, Mr. McStay had a business, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And it was called Earth Inspired Products,
Yes, sir.
and they sold fountains online as part of their business.
They did.
So, your understanding was that when people would buy the fountains, they would buy them online, and then money would come in. into the
Objection,
business.
relevance, cumulative.
Sustained. It's cumulative.
Did you know, or did you make yourself aware of what happened to the business after Mr. McStay disappeared?
Objection, relevance, cumulative, and calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you know where the money was going for people who were buying fountains after Mr. McStay disappeared?
Objection, relevance, cumulative.
Sustained on those grounds as well as calling for hearsay.
No, I'd like to hear on that issue.
Okay. Next question. All right, the last objection is sustained.
Did you look into, and when I say you, if you know that someone else did it, feel free to say that as well, another person in the team. But are you aware of whether you or a member of your team looked into where the money was going from the online sales of fountains for the McStay business?
Are you talking about while they were alive?
No, after they disappeared, the business continued operating, correct? Is that your understanding?
I believe Susan Kavanaugh and Merrick, Susan Blake, Kavanaugh and Merrick tried to keep the business going, but they ultimately weren't able to keep the business afloat, so to speak.
Okay. That would be the custom side of the business?
I don't know if it was both sides or not. I know they weren't able to keep it going correctly. There were jobs that were promised that weren't completed, so that the business ended up failing, so to speak.
Okay. So it's your understanding that the business failed, when would it have failed? Months after, a year after? What was your general understanding?
I don't remember offhand. I know Susan was the one that basically talked about the fact that they tried to do everything they could to get the business to succeed, but basically ultimately they couldn't because there was too much stuff too many irons in the fire, I guess is a lack of a better word.
What about the online sales of fountains? You know that was separate from the custom side of the business, right?
Well, I don't know whether it was separate, but yeah, there was two different parts where they would do custom fabricated fountains and then a commercial side where they would sell ones that were already prefabricated, yeah.
Online, right?
Yeah.
What happened, or did you make yourself aware of what happened with that side of the business and where that money was going?
I don't recall where the money was going. I don't remember exactly when that part of the business shut down. I'm sure it was probably still going into a PayPal account or some sort of an account that was set up.
Do you know whose PayPal account it was going into?
And
Would that be an important thing to know in your investigation?
I'm sure I probably asked at the time, but again, like I said, I don't recall everything as I sit here today.
Your Honor, does the court want to take the lunch break?
Sure, we'll go ahead and take our noon recess at this time, and we're not going to be in session this afternoon. One of our jurors has an optometrist appointment, right? Yes? Okay, so we won't be in session this afternoon. We're not going to be in session on Monday, so we will resume on Tuesday at 9:30 in the morning. Again, keep in mind the admonitions previously given to you, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case or allow anyone to discuss the case with you. And again, that means not discussing anything about the case, witnesses, testimony, exhibits, parties, or attorneys. And we'll see everyone back Tuesday at 9:30.